Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is a Protecting the Planet with Your Kids edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville and the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, part of our beautiful, amazing, fantastic world. We are so happy that you are joining us in our mission to protect the planet with our kids. We have a very special guest for you today. To introduce our guest, please welcome to the show my co-host, Alexia Brown.
We are here today with Mary DeMocker, author of The Parent's Guide to Climate Revolution, 100 Ways to Build a Fossil-Free Future, Raise Empowered Kids, and Still Get a Good Night's Sleep. This interview was full of different ways to protect our planet, just like her book. She explains that whether you have 5 minutes or 5 days to help, there is something for you and your family to do. I can't wait for you guys to listen. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Yes, of course. Tell us a little bit about the Parent's Guide to Climate Revolution.
Yeah, it's a book that I wrote, came out in 2018, and I wrote it because this is the guidebook that I wanted when I had younger children. My kids are in their early 20s now, and I used to lie awake at night worried about the climate crisis and about the environment and deforestation and pollution, and I just wondered, what kind of world are we creating for my children that I love more than anything? And so I started to, when I was worried, I started to get politically active. First, we were really busy, shrinking our carbon footprint and recycling, biking, gardening. We lived in a tiny house, a really tiny house. And at some point around 2007, I realized we needed actually much bigger system change, and that all the work I was doing on on the family front was not going to add up to enough. And so I started trying to do system change. I started doing local, political writing and local organizing, and started a climate group with some friends. And so as I was doing more political kind of work and working with families and children and local community members, parents started to ask me, well, how can I do just a few things? I'm really busy. I just need a few things that I can do with my kids because I'm overwhelmed with working and parenting. And also I really am concerned about the climate crisis. I am concerned about pollution, and I am concerned about my children's future. So just give me a list of 5 or 10 things that I can do to make a difference. And so that list of 5 or 10 things became this list of 100 things, a book with 100 chapters. And each chapter has 3 to 15 ideas that parents can do who are busy, who are overwhelmed, who care about the future, but also really need to worry about packing the lunch for the soccer game and making sure the math homework is done. So it's full of ideas for, yes, some of it is shrinking our carbon footprint. Some of it is taking care of parents' needs, because often we, especially mothers, tend to put our kids and families and communities first. So it's a little bit about self-care and care for your soul, and then how to build communities while trying to work for a better future. And a big portion of the book, the last third of the book, is called Build a Fossil-Free Future. And it's ways that we can actually start taking political action, how we can start working for system change at a time when there's so many big decisions being made about how we use energy, how we're doing farming. Do we subsidize fossil fuels? Do we teach climate literacy in our classrooms? These are all really important questions as young people especially are waking up to the climate crisis and looking to their parents for ideas. What can we do at home? What can we do at school? What books should we be reading on the weekends, especially during a pandemic when we're home? What movies are actually going to inspire me? So the book has hundreds of ideas for just that. If you have just a minute, there are ideas for you. If you have 5 minutes, if you have 5 hours. If you have no money, there are ideas. If you have $5, if you have $50. So everything is kind of at the end of each of the 100 chapters. There are ideas for different levels of energy and time and money, most of all, just making it accessible to all parents everywhere.
One of the things I like as you're describing the book, I think a lot of times when we're looking at these big problems, these big global problems, we get kind of overwhelmed and thinking, oh, there's so much to do and I can't do it all by myself. So I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to get a cheeseburger. But I love how you've broken it down and letting parents and families know that you don't need to do everything. You can just start by doing 3 or 4 things and then add to that and let it grow organically.
Absolutely. It's so important that we recognize that we cannot change this problem alone. We really do. It's a collective problem. It has collective solutions. And yes, there are things that we can do at home, but we don't want to get that sense that many of us do have because we read the news often by ourselves. We get it on our phone. We're at work or the kids are online and they see some really scary article or news headline or video or something, and there is this sense that it's just on us. We have to fix this. And I think that's probably one of the strongest messages in my book is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You do not have to solve this problem. There are literally millions of people worldwide who are pursuing so many different wonderful, life-affirming solutions to the climate crisis, and we just have to find the ones that appeal to us or find the ones that work for our families and push those solutions along a little by talking about them. We need to just say, I'm going to choose one thing or 2 things. Maybe there's one thing a month. And then you celebrate, hey, we as a family did this together and it was kind of fun. Or you know what, next time I'd like to try something different. So I do think you're right. It's really about making it manageable and also making it fun.
Yeah, and I think making it fun is definitely a huge part of that family and community aspect. And I think that really will help kind of foster your child's curiosity about their world around them and about how best to care for their world around them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really like that you emphasize and remind us we need to celebrate after we do one of these things.
Absolutely. I think as parents, it's important for us to remind our children that we can make a goal. Like, let's say that we want to cut our food waste. You know, that's one of those things you can do at home. So maybe your goal for the month or even for 3 months is we are going to try not to throw out so much food. Either because we were a little bit less careful than we could have been with how we cooked, and we found that bag of spinach in the back of the fridge. It was completely a goopy, rotten mess. So maybe we try to work together to not overbuy, or we try to notice that we're scraping a lot of our food at the end of the night off of our individual plates into the compost. So let's say that we make a little chart and we're going to measure how much compost we have. We're going to measure how much garbage we have, whatever system that you want to use in your family, and say, you know what, we got to that 10%. Now we're all going out for ice cream. Really honor it. Really celebrate. Hey, we made a choice about something we were going to do together, and we won.
You have so much passion, Mary, and I know that you shared with us earlier that you kind of woke up and you said, what kind of world are my kids going to live in? Was there one thing in particular that happened that sparked that concern in you?
Well, no, to be honest, I grew up out in the country on a lake in New York, and I grew up loving nature because we had 2.5 acres with this lake. I mean, Lake Ontario, you cannot see the other side. It's like an ocean in the backyard. And so I grew up with so much love of nature and so much time to adventure in it. And so I've always had this appreciation for nature and for the fact that my parents gave me, like us, the time in it and little boats and floaties and we had horses. We were really privileged. And so from a young age, I also felt aware of threats to the world that I love, whether it was a new development in my neighborhood or, acid rain on the East Coast where I grew up. It was really a big issue in the 80s and 90s. And then that just evolved over time to, wow, I have children and we are hearing more and more about temperatures rising. I'm seeing more fires now that I live on the West Coast, out here on the West Coast. I'm seeing, more sea level rise. I'm reading really depressing articles. And I have, at that time, this is 2007, I had an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I started to lie awake at night. I literally lay awake thinking, what should I be doing for my children? What's the most important thing? What kind of education do they need? And that's when, somewhere around 2008, I went to a talk by Bill Mckibben, who actually ended up writing the foreword to my book. And I said, Bill, I have a suspicion that my family's efforts are not going to be enough. And I can't do both. I can't both be, doing social change and hanging my laundry and gardening and always recycling everything. Like, which is more important? I'm suspecting that it's big system change. And he said, yes, get political, don't worry about your family's carbon footprint. It is minuscule compared to the carbon footprints of, let's say, the oil industry. So that was my big moment, was in 2007 in that conversation, kind of having somebody who was a hero of mine actually validate and sort of affirm my suspicion that I had had for a couple of years that I need to be doing different kinds of environmental protection work. And it looks like that needs to be big and bold. And, there wasn't a huge climate movement, I would have to say, in 2007. So I was feeling a little scared about it. How do I do this? And again, that's why I ended up writing the guidebook.
Yeah, I noticed that you brought up like social and political change is a really, really important part of the movement. But I think what gets often a lot of attention is the ways to reduce your carbon footprint at home and things like that. And I think that is incredibly great and a really good way for a lot of families to kind of get started and let their kids feel empowered. But are there ways to also involve your kids in enacting social change and kind of getting involved in the more intricate political part of climate change?
Yeah, I think every community in North America has a local fossil fuel fight. There are all kinds of campaigns, particularly on the West Coast where I live, to end the burning of fossil fuels. That's a really large topic right now. Are we going to leap to more wind and more solar and more geothermal and wave power and conservation, or are we going to keep drilling, fracking for gas, drilling for oil, doing more coal, things that we know are actually not only bad for the climate, but are really, really harmful to human health. In terms of how does a child fit into that, in our family, we went to hearings as a family. Other families, kids would write speeches, and they were the ones that had the microphone at a rally. Other kids were writing letters to the editor. There's all kinds of ways that you can be creative with the idea of resistance to the fossil fuel industry. That local newspaper editors are really eager to hear young voices. So if adults can say, hey, I heard that you were really worried about the climate crisis, or you're really worried about plastic in the oceans or a species extinction, do you want to write a letter to the editor? I'll help you edit it and we'll send it in. Let's just see what the editor says. And you will find 9 times out of 10 that a local editor is super excited for fresh voices in their newspaper. So those are just some ideas for helping young people, amplify their voices. If they're interested in something, help them find a way to speak publicly.
I really like how you make being so socially and politically empowered seem very easy on a local level. I think oftentimes we feel like Washington D.C. is so far away, and you're just overwhelmed, and you feel like there's just no way that anything that you do will really make a difference in that atmosphere. But I mean, in the town you live in, there's a mini government right there that is making important decisions that affect our future, and it's easy to just go and learn and fight to protect the planet.
As you were speaking, talking about action on a local level and that kids can impact things on a local level, I was reminded of something that happened when my son was in kindergarten 25 years ago. One of his classmates was very upset. On the way to school, he saw that a goose had been hit by a car. And so he wrote to the mayor here in Boston, and I just drove by the goose crossing sign that was erected after Nathan wrote to Mayor Menino here in Boston, and they erected the sign, and it's been up there protecting the geese for the last 25 years.
Well, that's wonderful. That's a perfect example of kids being empowered by the adults around them to make change, because they have the feeling and the emotion, but they need our help to connect them with the right person to amplify that emotion or that idea. Kids have wonderful, creative, really brilliant, out-of-the-box ideas for the climate solution. Sit down with some young kids sometime and ask them what they would do, and they have some great ideas. So I think the other thing, when you mentioned, Alexia, about wow, it feels so far away, DC and big national leaders, I think it's key for young people that are inclined to meet other young leaders. So you've got people like Jamie Margol, and she wrote Youth to Power, and that's a guidebook for young people that's wonderful. She is 18 years old, and she's been fighting and speaking and writing for the last 4 years. And when young people meet people like that, they see what's possible for themselves. They see that she didn't ask permission. She wasn't handed a microphone. She just grabbed one. And maybe not everybody is quite as bold as she is, but I think learning about what other people are doing, when children learn about Greta Thunberg's work, a lot of them get pretty fired up. She's really been a catalyst for the global climate movement. You can follow, if your kid is old enough and doing social media, you can help them find other activists they can follow and see what they're doing. And there's a group called Sunrise that has, and it's North American, it has, I think, 185 hubs, they call them, for young people. It's high schoolers and college kids, and they are really rocking the youth climate movement. And then there's a group called, there's Our Children's Trust. And this group really excites a lot of kids because they are actually suing the government for destroying the climate. There are lawsuits worldwide through Our Children's Trust that are in multiple countries in the world and in multiple states. They've been in all 50 states in the United States. So it's fun for kids to learn about what? Kids are suing the government? What does that look like? And get inspired and see, what works and what doesn't work, and how they can be part of different campaigns that young people are waging all over the world.
Yeah, social media is such a powerful tool, and I think it's wonderful that not only are we able to spread so much information around and things like that, but it's building communities of people who need each other to feel empowered and to feel less alone and to feel strong in their fight, and like they're not just all on their own, because some places in the world it can really feel like you're the only one who cares about certain issues.
Absolutely. I think you're right. It's especially for people who are geographically more isolated or socially isolated in some way, it's really important to connect, especially young people. And what I found over and over is that when young people are empowered to take effective change, big change that's really feeling to them like, okay, this matters. This is going to make a difference. Once they're engaged in that with other young people, they tend to feel happier and more relaxed about what's coming. They feel empowered and they feel like, oh, I'm doing this together. It's sort of this normal, fun thing to do. And that, I think, is key, is that we can so often feel isolated and despairing. But once we are working together on a solution that actually can make a difference, we tend to get happier.
Well, I know one thing that made my kids and my beautiful wife and I happy was doing fun projects that had a purpose as a family together. And Alexia was telling me that you have some great ideas throughout the book of things that families can do. Is there one thing that you can share with us right now that a family can, kind of easily take on as a project?
I'll say one thing, and it's completely my bias because I love art and music and stories. So one thing that people could do is use whatever public space they control. So for me, one of the ways I got started was I took over my front lawn. I live near a bunch of colleges and schools, and there's a lot of pedestrian and bike traffic. And so I actually started, first it was just me and then my kids joined. We just hung things from the trees. We hung signs and banners, and we actually put a fake pipeline up, and we gave out information. We've had mailboxes where people can, be registered to vote. We put the voter registration cards out there and we stamped them. And so people can take those, and we put information out about different candidates. We put information out about hunger in our community. You can riff off of that. You can do a beautiful kid-made poster in the window of your car or your front window or on your apartment door that they make, and they say, this is important to me. This is something I would like to happen, whether it's, ending poverty and or hunger in their community, ending whatever it is. It doesn't have to be climate related. Whatever it is that's important to them, put it on the front door. Let your neighbors know that you care, and maybe find one thing that you can put on that poster that your neighbors can do. So you can do whatever version of that works for your family, on your front door or your car bumper or anywhere. You can do it on your person. You can put a sign on yourself.
I think teaching your kids that they have the agency to let the world knows what matters to them is a great way to feel empowered in this movement. And I think asking your kids what they care about and to draw a poster to hang on your front lawn or on your car or anything like that is such a fun and creative way to really just jumpstart your climate activism.
And I think it's good to remind kids that their opinion matters. And when they see that the most important person in the world, their parents, their mom, their dad, their caregiver, cares about their opinion, respects their opinion, even if they don't agree with it 100%, that's a really empowering lesson for kids and really helps them grow strong, I think.
I agree. I think amplifying their voices rather than telling them what to think, asking them, what do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? Do you want to find out more? I can help you. I'll partner with you so that you can find out what you need to know about this particular animal, let's say, that you're concerned about, like your son with the geese, that the idea of finding out, well, what can we do? Oh, we could have a crossing. Find out what would help solve the issue that they are concerned about. Help them find a microphone, a platform, a way to express positively and constructively their feelings and their solutions. Because I think one of the worst things for young people is to feel alone in the climate crisis, to feel like adults are saying, well, we're going to raise you up so that, you're ready to deal with this crisis, and good luck with that. We're going to go before you are, and we'll do our best to prepare you. And that's actually not a useful message for young people. What they need to know is that you can help empower them right now to make the changes we need, but also that you're right there beside them. We are not going to leave this burden on your shoulders. You know, tell your dear children that we are in this with you for the long haul.
Wow, that is great, great advice. Thank you so much for sharing today all of your wonderful tips and tricks for parents and kids to feel empowered in the climate movement. Where can listeners find you and your book if they want even more help with how to start?
Yeah, they can find it on all the usual platforms like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can find it from my publisher, New World Library. I also really advocate, as a book lover, that people buy it from their local independent bookstores. If you don't have one, that's easy. You can buy it from my local independent bookstore, which is called Tsunami Books. They will send you the book for $16.95, including the shipping. They'll send it anywhere in North America. So that's another option. And in terms of where else I am, I'm on Instagram at Mary DeMocker, or maybe M DeMocker, I'm not sure, but there's nobody else even close to my name. And then also I have a Facebook page, Parents Climate Revolution, and Twitter, M DeMocker. So just find me on all those platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And then my website is really probably the best place because it has all kinds of resources that you can have for free in terms of tips and ideas. There's actually 100 tips for parents during the coronavirus to keep your kids off screens and not go crazy. So I forget the title, but it's basically 100 tips for families under coronavirus. And that's at my website at marydemocker.com.
Awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much for sharing this time with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your work and your energy supporting authors and sharing all these good books with families everywhere.
Please be sure to join us for the next Protecting the Planet with Your Kids episode next Thursday. I want to thank all of the people who made today's episode possible. Of course, a huge thank you to our guest, Mary DeMocker, and another huge thank you to the Reading with Your Kids team, Alejandra Doherty and Fatima Khan. Please be sure to visit our website, protectingtheplanetwithyourkids.com.